Hello and welcome to this episode of Eldric Talks. Today I'm talking with CT Soyoye about his self-published novel The Unwanted and the development of his AI visualization tool called Visual Novel. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. CT, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Eldric. It's nice to meet you.
How has your day been so far?
It was a long one, I won't lie to you, but it was good. I got to meet a couple friends, got to go around town, and yeah, it was a nice day. I enjoyed it. How did you spend your day?
Well, I prepared for this interview as thoroughly as I could.
I appreciate that. I appreciate your diligence to do that.
Maybe give us a little bit of background information about you. How old are you?
So I am 23 years old. I started writing roughly when I've been writing for almost all my life, but when I started writing to be published, I was maybe around 18. And I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I'm still pretty young, but I'm feeling pretty old. But yeah, no, how long have you been doing podcasting?
Well, on and off. I did a few podcasts when I was a bit younger, like 5 years ago was the last run that I had. And yeah, now's my time to get back into it again, now that work and private life has settled down a little bit.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing your podcast. I'm really excited to be on here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Morocco, country tip of Africa. But I grew up in Nigeria, which is the giant of Africa, and I was there from basically after I was born till I was around 14, and then I moved over to the UK, where I'm currently based. So yeah, the last couple of years of my childhood, of my development stages, have all been in the UK, which is it's been a lot of fun. Really like living here, and I don't see myself moving for a little bit. But yeah, no. How about you? You grew up in Germany, right?
Yeah, Germany, born and raised.
Oh wow, okay,
And
amazing.
At what age did you go to the UK?
When I was 14 years old, yeah, it was quite exciting.
How was it? I imagine that's quite of a culture shock.
Oh, it 100% was. I remember standing and just being absolutely dazed by all the new stuff that was going on. You know, it was very overwhelming at the time. But I think I enjoyed it so much that I started to just fall in love with the place. And although it has its flaws, like UK is pretty amazing, to be honest.
What was the most difficult part to adapt, other than maybe the weather?
The weather was definitely a problem. I will say the weather is definitely an issue. But like you say, I think the biggest thing was the people, you know. I think the differences in ideologies and personalities, I really had to learn how people here behaved, you know. So I really had to understand what kind of jokes they make, what kind of personalities they had, and yeah, how to react to different people. So I think that's one of the biggest things for me.
And when you come from a different country and you are thrown into school life, and you have to adapt both socially and academically. How did you manage? Did you try to hide most of the time, or did you kind of embrace it?
I think I lean towards embracing it for sure. I will say another huge thing was the accent, you know. So I went to Scotland, which is like they have thick accents, which is quite tough to deal with. So you're learning chemistry and you're hearing all these chemical names, but in this thick Scottish accent, and it was a bit overwhelming at the start. But you just slowly start to adapt, right? The more if you don't stop trying, eventually it just starts to click and it gets easier. So I think I was just brought up to always just keep going, even if you're failing and if you're not doing too well, it's fine. Just keep going until you start succeeding. But yeah, that's what it was like for me.
I had a short 10-day exchange project in school and was in Scotland as well, near Edinburgh. and it was
Oh,
horrible. I didn't understand a thing.
I can imagine. That's quite a horrible accent to get used to. I won't lie to you.
Yeah.
It's a great accent when you understand it, but really tough at the start. What was that exchange about? Like, how did you find it?
It was just a school organized exchange where we just went there for 10 days, and then a student from, it was from Dunfermline. And then for 10 days they went here to Germany. And the thing that stood out most, that instead of saying yes, they all seemed to just say I.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And instead of thank you, I think they say cheers. It's a very, very interesting place. I love it though. It's good. It's good fun. Adam, what did you think of the country? Did you enjoy Edinburgh? I know it has a lot of beautiful sights and
Oh, I loved it.
lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
great.
think it
That's
was
lovely.
beautiful. I didn't get around too much in Edinburgh, but we had a few excursions into the countryside and saw a few of those beautiful orange cows. So,
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I really would like to actually visit more of Europe and come to Germany and see what's that's like. Growing up there, what would you recommend? What's the number one thing I need to go to if I visit Germany?
oh wow. Well, you can visit Neuschwanstein. That's probably the biggest thing. You probably have to visit Berlin as well, Brandenburger
Okay,
Tor, and that kind of stuff.
I need to
And
make a list.
oh, and well, I mean, when we're in Germany already, you can also visit a few of the concentration camps.
Oh no, really? That's really cool. Well, cool in a interesting historic kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, as school children were dragged into there, so I don't think any German student gets to grow up without visiting one at least once.
Really? Oh wow.
Uh, it's quite a surreal experience because you always just hear about it, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, that it was a actual real thing and a real place. And
Wow.
uh,
Yeah, I think actually visualizing or actually seeing that would be very interesting. You always, like you say, you always hear about it, but you never really, until you see it in person, it might not really click for you, you know? So
yeah,
that'd be quite cool.
I'm usually quite bored when I visit historical places, but that was really one of the few times where I had to get outside to breathe because it was quite heavy.
Oh yeah? So you're not a very, what I say, like you're not a museum kind of guy. What kind of stuff do you enjoy to do? Are you more of a activities kind of person?
Well, actually, I
Like,
liked I liked going to museums when I was living in Berlin. I had
okay.
a year ticket for the Gemäldegallery there with all the Renaissance paintings and stuff, and I went
Oh,
there
very
quite
cool.
often. Yeah, but unfortunately, there are not really a lot of museums where I'm right now. I'm like
Hmm.
in the bigger metropolitan area of Frankfurt,
Okay.
and it's a bit calmer country life, but not that many cultural activities.
So
Yeah.
you enjoy more spending your time online, or how do you usually spend your time?
Well, I mean, that's basically the standard program. We have video games, YouTube videos, and a book here and there,
That's
and
amazing. Yeah. No,
and
I
of
really like that.
and of course now doing the podcast as well.
Of course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How would video games do you play?
I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I actually just got Valhalla. I'm very excited to try that.
I loved it. I think it was a great
Really?
game. It
Uh-huh.
had very little to do with Assassin's Creed as how you know it,
All
with
right. Okay.
stealth and quietly killing people. It's more of a
Yeah.
bigger war game, but doesn't have to be bad.
Okay.
But
That's very cool.
it became just a bit too big and too long. I think I spent 70 hours and I'm not even halfway through.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
uh,
Wow. I was not expecting that, but I bought the game, so might as well play it.
yeah,
It's good. That's amazing. I played Black Flag back in the day, so I really enjoyed that one. So I just thought might as well give this one a chance. People were talking about it fairly recently, so
yeah.
yeah, just bought.
I only heard good things about Black Flag, but I tried it, but I couldn't really get into it. I
Yeah.
was too used to the Origins, Odyssey, newer kind of Assassin's Creed games.
Mm.
It was yeah.
Yeah, I get that. No, I get that. That makes sense. Interesting. So you've played video games all your life, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Also my life.
Grew up on YouTube, YouTubers? You watch any English-speaking YouTubers for gaming or?
Um, not that much. I'm not a big Let's Play consumer,
Okay.
but I did I would say I learned a lot of my current English skills by watching a lot of Ellen DeGeneres shows on
Oh,
YouTube.
really?
Yeah,
Interesting. I was not expecting that. That's interesting. Okay.
yeah. It was
I guess
just
that's where you got your podcast skills from as well. It's
yeah.
very, very seamless. I really enjoy
I,
it. I'm really enjoying it.
I just hope that I'm not as mean as Ellen, but just wait and
No, no,
see.
no. You've been great so far. It's been amazing. But I have my guard up now. You know,
Yeah,
uh, I'm prepared for anything.
yeah. And now behind you, somebody's scaring you.
Uh,
When did you first really start writing stories?
so, like I said, I started just writing when I was quite young. I consume a lot of stories in different mediums. I love watching movies. I love watching series. I love reading books, just stories in any shape or form, video games, anime, all of it. Um, and very young, I wanted to start write my own story and have my own thing, my own impact on people. So I started writing. I must have been around 12 or 13. But obviously, when you're that young, your stories aren't very good. Your vocabulary isn't very good. But I used that as just the starting blocks to start um, just practicing. I would write fan fictions just for myself, or I would write just random stories I came up with in my head. And then eventually, when I was 18, that's when I first found a story that I really could not stop thinking about. I would go to class, and every day I would be thinking about how this character would behave. I was thinking about how the story would play out, and it would not let me go. I was losing focus in class because I was thinking about it. So I decided that although there was many different mediums I could have chosen, I thought writing was the most appropriate for the story. Number one, because obviously I had limited funds and access to other stuff, but also just I love writing. So I chose writing as the medium to tell the story in, and I started writing it, and slowly but surely I started sharing it around and getting opinions, and then yeah, the story really just progressed and blew up way more than I ever expected it to.
And the story you're talking about is your book, The Unwanted.
Yes, The Unwanted by
Okay.
ZT Shoye.
Okay. And
I posted it.
before we get
Yeah.
to that, I still have to ask you, what kind of fan fiction did you write?
You can, I was hoping to skip by that one. No, I'm joking. I wrote I remember writing one called The Secret Avengers. So I love Marvel. So I wrote The Secret Avengers, which was meant to be I think it was meant to be their kids or something, until I realized The Secret Avengers is already a thing. Like it's already a thing in the comics. So I
Hmm.
don't know why I wrote it. I could have just gone to read the books. But yeah, Avengers, and then I did a little bit of Naruto fan fiction.
Hmm.
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, I think those are the two I'm willing to disclose.
I think most
Uh,
people think when they think about fan fiction about somewhat homoerotic inspired stories,
uh,
but
nah, that's not where I
uh,
was going.
okay.
Nah, just mostly just action based, just stuff
Okay.
I thought could be developed more from different mediums and different storylines that I saw.
Uh,
Yeah.
And so The Unwanted, how long did it take you to write that from first having the idea to it actually being completely published?
It took about 3 years, I would say. 3 or 4 years, depending if you want to include the editing process.
Mhm.
So I first started by posting, so I kept it to myself for the longest time. I wasn't planning to share it. I was just planning to write it to get the story out of my head. But then I thought, why not post it, see what people think? So I posted it on a platform called Wattpad.
Mhm.
Um, and slowly over a couple months, it started getting some traction. It got featured, started getting a couple views, and they started getting comments. And people were really interested to know what's going on in the next chapter and then the next. And they helped me develop the story. And I was posting weekly, and it became a whole um, dynamic with on Wattpad. It was a whole thing that I really enjoyed while I was doing it. Um, and yeah, it took 3 or 4 years doing that, or it took around 2 years of Wattpad posting, then 1 year of editing it, um, and then another year to send it over to a copywriter to get it professionally edited. Um, so yeah, I would say 3 or 4 years working on that book.
And those 3 years on Wattpad, was that really a consistent weekly schedule that you uploaded a chapter every week?
I would, at some points it was, but no, I would not say over the whole 3 years I could have uploaded a weekly. I definitely was not consistent.
Mm.
Obviously, you have school, you had vacations. There was no
Wow.
way to really keep it up, but I did try my best to. And it was relatively consistent, I would say, especially towards the middle when I was really highly motivated, and towards the end as well when I wanted to finish the story up. I really did start posting a bit
Wow.
more consistently.
And how much of a idea did you have when you started writing it of how the whole story is going to unfold?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I've, like I said, I was obsessed with thinking about the story. So I had really random details laid out, like how he, I don't even know how to, like how he behaves when he's taking a test, or how he, what sports he plays, like really random facts that had nothing really to do with the core storyline. Um, the main stuff I had laid out was one of the big twists, and the characters. So just to clarify, it's a fantasy novel. It's a fantasy mystery novel, and I had one of his abilities in the book laid out, and those were like the two core things that really I knew were going to happen. Apart from that, I didn't have much else of the plot laid out. It was more of a write as you go kind of thing and figure it out chapter by chapter. But I knew my starting point and I knew my ending point. So I just needed to find a way to get there.
And did the community that read these chapters, did they in a way contribute to that? Did they
Thousand
give you
percent.
ideas?
1,000%. I honestly could not have done it without them. They there was so many people who not only helped me in terms of writing skills, but also just in terms of the storyline. I had one storyline laid out, but somebody was so it was like I said, it's a mystery novel, so different people were trying to guess what my mystery was. Some people would say such like insightful stuff that I would try and implement it, even though it wasn't originally planned. I would implement it into the story because of just how amazing it was. So that whole community
Mm.
just influenced the story completely, and it was, yeah, no, I could not have done it without them.
And how long were these chapters approximately?
So I am quite, I don't know what generation I would say I am, but maybe Gen Z, I don't know. But I
Yeah,
understand that
probably, yeah.
I understand that a lot of us have short attention spans. Okay, so I tried to keep the chapters relatively short so people could read it fairly quick, but it wasn't too small that it would be annoying. So each chapter, I believe I aimed when I was writing it for Wattpad between 1,000 to 2,000 words. I think that was the
Mm.
aim. But some chapters that I thought needed more, of course, I wrote like maybe 3,000 word chapters. Sometimes I needed to end on a low cliffhanger, so maybe it only had 800. Um, but yeah, 1,000 to 2,000, that would be the average, I would say.
I think that's a good length. I hate it when books have 20-page chapters, especially
Exactly.
when I'm in bed and I just want to read a chapter. I want it to be over quickly and not have to commit to like 2 hours of reading.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid, because I have the same thing where so I commute to work, and I'm on a bus a lot of the time. So I'm on this bus and I'm like, okay, I'm really tired because it's in the morning, but I really want to read something or engage my brain. So I'm gonna read a chapter, and then I turn the page and it just keeps going and going, and I'm like, oh my God, when is it gonna end? And I try to skip ahead and I see there's like 7 more pages. I'm like, oh, it's good, but Jesus, please just keep it short, and
Mm.
just, yeah, leave some space in between.
And guide us a little bit through it. So let's imagine you just finished the last chapter of the book and now your editing phase starts. How do you approach that?
So like I said, the community really helped me in terms of the writing style. So one of the things I did was go back through all the comments, really write down each comment I saw that I thought was insightful and constructive. Um, so if somebody mentioned your use of adverbs was maybe a bit too much, or if you wanted to speed up a scene, it's actually better to use less words because then you're reading the text faster. So
Mhm.
instead of saying quickly, sometimes you can leave that out and just this actual, like the speed of reading it kind of adds that effect of speed and you can imply it in different ways. So I would take the comments that I saw and I would put them on a Word document and I would try and read through my whole story one more time and implement that in different scenes I thought could use some help. Um, Also, just sharing it around with some friends I knew that read that just to help me with the spell checking and the grammar and different things. And then finally, the main editing point was when I sent it to a professional copywriter. I used a company called Elite Authors. Oh, sorry, don't mean to plug them or anything, but yeah, they were good.
Mhm.
Um, and I used a company called Elite Authors, and they did the copywriting for my book, which is just going over it and fixing all the major stuff and all the grammar or the spellings and stuff. And they would leave comments in the book that are of what they thought and what they think could be improved and how to improve it. So one by one, I would go through the entire document and try and address each comment. Um, so I
Mhm.
remember one of them was that I did not know before sending it to them was numbers in books. If you wanted to write anything below 100, I believe it's you have to spell it out. So you don't write 99. You don't put the numbers 99. You write 99, stuff like that. So
Mhm.
just very interesting stuff that I would have learned without them. But yeah, that editing process was very long, and I will say, for me, it was not the most exciting part. But
Mhm.
I understand it's very necessary
Yeah.
to fine tune.
I think most authors dread the editing process.
Yeah, it's quite a daunting phase of the whole process.
Just writing everything down is so much more fun. You make
Yeah, to
actual
get
progress, and now you have to go back and fix a sentence.
yeah, it was. I won't lie. It took like I said, it almost took a year just to get through every single comment. And I think this was during COVID as well, so I had loads of time, but it
Mm.
still was like just taking forever to get through it.
Oh. And so, after you finished all the chapters on Wattpad, let's say that's your first draft, and then after that, um, the the going through all the comments, that's then your second draft, and that second draft you send to your editor, right?
Yeah, after reading through the comments and yeah, I did do a little more restructuring of the story that I thought would be more beneficial. But yeah, after
Oh.
that, it was pretty much straight to the editors.
And then basically, what feedback they gave you, you used to create the third draft, and that's
Yep.
basically the book that we can get today.
Yeah, I would add one more draft though, because even after posting it, after the copywriters gave it to me, I did after publishing it properly, even then I was still getting feedback.
Mhm.
And from that feedback, because this would be on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and other platforms, I was getting feedback from other people who made some relatively, constructive points that I thought, yeah, that definitely is a problem and that definitely should be addressed. So I believe I've done one final draft from when I first posted it. So there's some people out there who have like a special copy that will hopefully never be seen, but like a special edition out there. Um, I remember there was one version that maybe I think three or four people have of the book. So the book is relatively thin. So I went for a more, in terms of the book interior, I went for a relatively small spacing to keep it like relatively thin so you can carry it around very easily to match other industry standards. But at the start, I hadn't done that, and the spacing was relatively large. So the book was maybe, like I want to say 3 to 4 times bigger than it was.
Okay.
So some people there have this massive version. I think I have a copy as well. Quite a big version of the book, um, unlike the one that you can get today, which is really slim, really light to carry.
And other from the size and the weight, maybe, how different is the current draft from the one before? Is it just
Ah,
minor things that you changed here and there, or did you do a bigger overhaul?
I would say it's more minor changes. I didn't want to make the people who bought the Amazon copy from the first time to not understand what's going to happen in the second book. So I made sure to keep the changes relatively minor, whether it was hinting at the mystery a bit better at the start or maybe taking some things away so you're more surprised. It was relatively minor stuff that I don't think would impact like if you read the story with two different people who read the story at those different drafts, they would both have the same idea of the story. There wouldn't be too many differences.
And when you compare the published version to the Wattpad version, I imagine them to be quite different.
They are quite different, I would say. The Wattpad version did get a slight update to make it a little bit similar to the published version, but I had to. There's some rules with Amazon where you have to take down any offering of free versions if you have it on other platforms. So I did have to take down a lot of the chapters from Wattpad, but the chapters that I've left up on Wattpad, they are relatively different from the Amazon one just because I felt it was um, maybe it was a sense of nostalgia, but it was more I wanted to leave this raw version of the book up there just so people who
Mm.
could see the history and see the change of what had taken place, they can compare it and see how far I've come, and also for myself just so I can see and go back and read and be like, oh wow, I wrote this, like wow, I've changed quite a lot, and yeah, I can see that improvement.
And with the original comments next to the chapter too, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
So,
You can see the exact comments that influenced what happened in the final version. So I think that's
uh,
a really cool little Easter egg. It's really fun.
so we can look at the comments now and then compare it with the book and
Yeah,
judge by ourselves if you really listened to them or not.
yeah. You can see which people could go back see if it was their comment that made a big impact to the final story.
When you sit down to write, do you have a solid setup that you use every time that you have to use in order to feel comfortable to write, or do you really more or less write wherever, whenever?
So my writing setup, I would say I'm leaning more towards the latter there. I, much like other authors, get inspirations at many different stages in our lives, but you can't rely on motivation to write. You need discipline as well. So I do try and force myself to write sometimes. Um, but when I'm feeling motivated, I really try to write. I don't need to set up to get into the zone of writing. So I can write on the bus. I have a notes app where I just quickly, whether I'm sleeping and I just like, wow, that was really interesting, and I just really quickly write it down on my phone so I can go home and write it better later. Or whether I'm reading a book, I'm like, oh wow, that was I love the way they described that. I'm gonna try and implement like their style or try and study how they did it, and I go back and write that. Um, or it's in the middle of the night and I just had an idea and I'm on bed and I'm just like, okay, I just got to write. So I'm a person who can listen to music when writing. I can sleep on my bed and write. So I'm not someone who needs like a whole setup. I'm a very dynamic kind of writer. I'm not really stuck to one setup.
Mhm. It seems to be one of the best approaches, probably, to writing a book. This kind of, in essence, this journalistic approach that doesn't matter where you are and what time it is. When something happens, you have to write a story. It has a deadline. It has to be
It
written
has to be done.
instead of asking or waiting for the inspiration to come to you magically.
Yeah, I do think that does help keep it more consistent and helps meet those deadlines a bit better. But of course, there's periods where you don't get inspiration for a very long time. and you get these lull periods, and even if you force yourself, you end up not using that because you don't enjoy it or you don't like what you're writing. So
Mm.
it's a give and take. I think there's benefits to those two different approaches.
But how much do you already edit what you've written while you're writing it, or just shortly after? Or do you just, because some authors do it that they just write down whatever comes to their mind just to have written it, and then just say, okay, I do that in half a year when I'm editing it, then I look back at it. And I don't care if it's written poorly, if maybe the grammar sucks, I just have to write it down somehow.
So my writing, uh, I guess tactic would be I write down what's on my mind, but I have so what I used to have, I have two separate documents. I have one for the things I write down, whether it's a description or whether it's a plot that I want, a plot note that I want to implement, and I write it down in one document. And then I have the document where I'm actually writing the story. Um, and I always have both of them open when I'm writing, and I just refer back to that. So whether it's like, oh, I remember writing this cool description, I'm gonna grab it and paste it here, or oh, I remember this plot point I want to add, so I'm gonna take it and do it there. So I I'm trying to avoid the situation I had previously where it took so long to edit the book. Um, because that is the strategy you mentioned was what I was doing before, where it's just whatever comes to mind, just write it down and shove it out the door, you know.
Mm.
But that causes you to spend so much more time later on in the editing phase. So I'm kind of editing it as I go, and hoping to minimize the amount of editing I have to do later on in the future. It does slow down the process. It does slow down the writing, which is why it's taking quite a few. It's been a few years since the first one. I'm really trying to get the second one to start, ramping up or ramping down. But there is many different benefits to taking your time to properly write it and just enjoy it.
It's a difficult compromise to find the right balance there between, on the one hand, trying to make enough progress and getting the story done, and on the other hand, not dreading the editing phase too much.
Exactly. Yeah. How about you? What is your approach your to your journalism or to your podcasting? Like, how do you prepare, and how do you actually like get in the zone um, to do this stuff? Are you like you mentioned that you prepare for this stuff, or are you more relaxed? Are you more coming up with questions on the spot? How do you approach your?
Well, the last interviews that I did a couple of years ago, I did a lot of preparation. I spent about a week going through the questions and then different drafts of the questions and a set order in which I want to ask them. And it was fun back then, but it was incredibly unpractical because oftentimes I had this nice storyline planned out. Okay, now I'm gonna go on this topic, and then I'm gonna ask this, and then with that answer, I segue to the other topic, and then I ask the
Yeah.
first question, and the answer all of a sudden segued already into a completely different part of the script, and yeah, so then I had the problem: do I ignore that now? Do I jump to that other topic? But then the middle part doesn't fit anymore. Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, no, I get that completely because it's the same thing, even just regular conversations, you know? There's some times where you know you're going to talk to someone, whether it's a girl you
Mm.
like or it's your boss, and you plan exactly what you're going to say. You have exactly what you're going to say, and you think you know their response, so you plan what you're going to say after that, and then you go up to them, and then their response is just nothing like you expected, and it's
Mm.
just like, okay, well, I did not plan for this scenario, and you just completely fumble the bag. I mean, that's me personally when I'm having conversations, but I think
Uh,
as we grow, we learn to adapt to changes.
I think some military guys said that no plan survives the first contact with the enemy, and so
That is a beautiful quote. I love that.
yeah, and so now what I'm doing is I have more or less a list of questions. I have different topics that I want to talk about, but it's all very loose, and I'm much more able to adapt to the situation, to adapt what you say, what you throw at me,
That's good.
and
No, that's really good.
it's definitely much more relaxed as well.
I'm keeping you on your toes, I hope.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
expect you to ask me so many questions, but it's fine.
Yeah,
That's,
no, I just thought it'd be it's nice to have like a conversation, you know.
no,
I watch a lot of I don't know if you've seen the YouTube show Hot Ones.
yes,
It's a show where they eat spicy. Oh, you've seen it, yeah. So just to clarify for anyone who might not have seen it, it's a show where they eat progressively spicier hot wings as they answer questions. And the episodes I enjoyed the most are the ones where you can see that both the host and the guest are like just vibing. They're just asking each other questions and they're just having like a normal conversation. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's a stunt or some kind of forced interaction. That's the episodes I enjoy the most.
yeah, it probably has a lot to do with practice and just getting used to it. I noticed the first interview that I did a couple of days ago. After not doing that for many years, it felt much more stiff than it did a couple of years ago when I did the last ones. And now with the second one, it already feels much more natural, and it's much easier, much more
I'm glad to hear
relaxing.
it. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine after taking a long break, it would be easy to jump right into it. So, I really hope you keep it going. And yeah, you're an amazing host. And I can't wait to see all the podcasts that you end up doing, and just hearing from more about the authors that you end up interviewing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well. I have to be completely honest, it's a little bit more difficult to find authors to talk to than I thought. I thought everybody would jump on the opportunity to be in a podcast and be interviewed, but people seem somewhat reluctant about it.
I will say I was also a bit hesitant at first. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I think a lot of authors are introverted, you know. One of the major benefits of being an author, I think, is you can be famous without without having to, put your face or voice out there. If your work is just that good, you generally don't need to put your face and voice out there. So a lot of them do tend to be introverted. So jumping on a podcast, especially when there's it's sometimes nerve-wracking, you know. But I do think it's an amazing opportunity. And if you need any references from me, because I have like a author Discord, and I have we have a community, obviously. So if you ever need some authors to interview, just let me know and I'll try and ask around.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that more once the interview is done.
Yeah, of course.
But I get that, basically being an author is sitting in your little room at night, typing away on a story and not really having any interaction with people.
Yeah.
And then jumping on a podcast, especially when you don't have any experience with that, is...
I think that's the big thing as well. So I've luckily tried my hand at streaming on Twitch, playing some video games a few years ago. So I'm relatively used to, number one, hearing my voice, but also just speaking and meeting new people, even if it's the first time, or so it's a very different skill set than a lot of authors have been bothered to learn, because they would never need it. And I only did it because I enjoy streaming, I enjoy gaming. So a podcast is a huge step for a lot of them. There will be a lot of hesitation.
Yeah, and the last interview I did, the first one of this new podcast, was with Nick Oliveri, and he talked about how because he worked at a startup before starting to write books, and in that startup he was professionally media trained by a PR agency.
Wow.
And that really showed. He was really able to really carry the interview, and he was really performing really, really well. And you don't realize how much impact that has until you meet somebody who was professionally media trained, because most people when I'm having a conversation with people, it's usually I have to ask the questions all the time because what I get back from people is just yeah, no, I don't know,
Got you. Yeah.
and having somebody who sees a cue
Understood.
and then is just able to professionally deliver,
To run with it. Yeah.
that's a joy.
That's amazing. I see it. We have a lot to live up to. But also it's just that is a skill I really wish I had learned. I think that kind of stuff is very vital
Mm,
when you're developing. Yeah. That's
yeah,
really cool.
but
I look forward to seeing that interview.
you're doing really well so far, so don't worry.
I appreciate that.
So back to your book. You decided to go the self-publishing route with it.
Yeah.
Why? Why not go
Um,
for try to find a traditional publisher?
so to be honest with you, that thought didn't even cross my mind until quite late in the game, you know? Um, I had already, I don't know why, I just thought I would do it myself initially, but maybe it was the confidence from Wattpad because it had gained traction on Wattpad, and I was like, yeah, I can't see what a publisher could could do for me that I couldn't do myself, especially with all the new resources available to people. Like I completely understand people who did it um, even just 10 years ago with like the lack of social media or there just wasn't many resources out there to do it yourself. But I guess maybe, like I said, the Gen Z thing, I don't know what it is, but I just had confidence that I could do
Mm.
it, whether it was the book editing, the interior design, the or even just hiring and finding people. I just knew the resources were out there, um, and I didn't really need a publisher. But that was when I first initially went to publish the book. And as I say, ignorance is bliss.
Mm.
Um, and as I got deeper into the process and fully understanding what it takes to publish, and what it fully means to self-publish, I found myself more looking like, okay, maybe it would be beneficial to find a publisher or a literary agent or so on and so forth. But eventually, I kept going with the self-publishing route. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even send out a single message to a publishing house.
Mm.
I didn't go through the rejection process. I didn't do any of that. I just kept going forward with self-publishing, trying to understand the full process. And
Mm.
one of the biggest driving factors after realizing how important it was to maybe having a publishing house was the learning experience. So I view most of the stuff I do as a learning experience because even if I fail drastically, I've learned something from it. Um, so from just trying to publish it myself, I think I can value and also contribute more if the next book I go to a publishing house. And if I get accepted or if I get rejected, so be it. But if I get accepted, then hopefully I can actually contribute to each process of it, whether it's
Mm.
the cover design, the book interior, the editing, the yeah, I just want to be able to understand each aspect of it and be able to um, put my own input.
And you already said that you got a professional editor for the editing process. Did you also get a professional graphic designer for the cover?
Yeah, so with Elite Authors, they were fantastic. Like I said, I think they gave me a very nice deal where they would do my book cover because I believe they're pretty much a publishing assistance company as a
Mm.
whole, I believe. So they have a whole host of services and different um, people working on it, very talented people. So they had a book in cover design service as well as their editing service. So I went with them for both and worked closely with the designer to figure out the look and how I thought I was trying to lean into.
In the other interview I did with Nick Oliveri, we talked a little bit about the financial aspect of it, and he said that he spent around $5,000 on one book with everything from editors to graphic design. if you want to talk about that, is that around the range that you spend as well in order to get everything done?
So yeah, I fully agree with what's his name, Nicola?
Nick. Nick
Nick. Yeah,
Oliveri.
Nick Oliveri. I completely agree with Nick. I do think if you are, I made some blog posts about this, really going through the process. But I do think if you're going to do the full process yourself, a full process, if you're going to outsource, sorry, the full process, it will cost you 4,000 to 5,000 dollars or pounds easily.
Mm.
However, I'm someone, like I said, who likes to learn or try to develop skills. So some of it I did try to do myself and other, because also I was 18, 19 thereabout. It was height of COVID, didn't really have much spare income to be spending 5 grand. So trying to save as much money while trying to keep the professionalism as much as I could. Tried to do some aspects of it myself. I think, for example, the stuff I thought I could do, being having a technology background, I was able to do some of the well, don't really need a technology background for this, but the Word document editing, I feel like I didn't really need to pay someone like £1,000 to do that. That was relatively
Mm.
simple. Doing the proofreading, well, the proofreading I did outsource and the copywriting I did outsource.
Mm.
But yeah, there's many different aspects of it that I could do myself, whether it was getting the ISBN or maybe only getting one. There was the whole process. I believe I spent maybe, if I remember correctly, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 pounds. So you can save quite a fair amount if you're lucky. I believe the price was probably closer to 1,000. So you can save a decent amount if you're lucky. Obviously, this is not including marketing costs because that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, Nick talked about how he had a Amazon ad campaign and I think a little ad team agency for Europe as well. He
wow.
was really he was really
Alright.
approaching that quite professionally,
Yeah,
which was also, of course, increasing the price a little bit. But I think the financial part is something that many authors kind of neglect until
yeah,
they are at the point where they have to do all these things, where they have to get an editor, where they have to kind of get a
exactly.
cover, and then they're
Yeah.
surprised that it's so expensive, and then they try to do it all themselves, and
hmm
oftentimes it shows.
Yeah,
Uh,
I fully agree. I do think that there is a sweet spot there where
mm,
you can obviously do some of it yourself if you're really confident, but you have to know your skill level and know what you're capable of, and also know what is very detrimental to the book. So, for example, in my opinion, the two most important things were, well, I wouldn't say the most important, but the things I really needed to outsource was the design of the cover. I have no design background, and although
mm,
sure I can use Photoshop, that doesn't mean I'm going to design a book cover, you
yeah,
know. And the second thing was the editing, because people are like, "Oh, I can read, I can edit my own book." I think that's not a great idea. I think you need a fresh pair of eyes. You always miss your own bad habits. You always don't
no,
know some stuff that other people would know. So it's always important to do that. And like Nick said, he's the outsourcing of advertising very, very smart. I do think that is one of the things I regret the most is that I tried to learn the advertising process because I viewed marketing as a very important skill that I should learn myself. But
mm,
marketing is very difficult, very, very multifaceted, and it
no,
just gets increasingly harder to cope, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, I do agree with Nick. I think his execution was the right way, especially if you have enough income and you're prepared to do that. 1,000% do it professionally and get it done right.
mm,
But there's always ways to, if you need to, do it yourself and save a couple pounds.
no. And especially with a marketing campaign, if you don't know what you're doing, it's probably one of the easiest ways to just burn money.
Yes,
So,
because there'll be a lot of trial and error. Um,
yeah,
yeah, there's loads of YouTube videos that try their best to educate you. But
Uh,
yeah, I burnt a lot of money in different ad campaigns that were completely useless or didn't go to the
mm,
intended audience, or I didn't see the return on. Yeah,
yeah,
completely understand that
it's one of the
incentive.
fields where having experience is really really valuable
Very
in
valuable.
order
I
not to
do
have
agree.
to make the same mistakes again.
Yes.
Uh,
I am actually currently in the process of looking for an ad um, campaign company to outsource the advertising to as well.
mm.
So honestly, I would love to maybe speak after the interview about which ones Nick used, or even speak to Nick himself.
And the thing with the cover is also that I think many authors try to do the cover themselves, and I think for many authors that's the point where they look at all the nice books they have in their bookshelf and think, oh, that's pretty, I want to do something like that. And then they
Mm,
think it's, I like that. It seems so easy, and I try to copy that. And then they
yeah,
look at the result, and then they realize it has very
it
little
was
to
so.
do with the actual book.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think the design of the cover is one of the biggest, if you're trying, that's one of the biggest pitfalls that a lot of self-published authors make, is they think because they know Photoshop, it's fine to just,
Yeah.
oh, I like the design. Oh, I can just do it. It's relatively simple. There's always these tiny things that you would never think about, whether it's the way they play with the colors or the shadows, or
Yeah.
just so many different things that I think you need to outsource the design. If that's not your day job, outsource it.
Mm.
That is.
Yeah. There's a real benefit to having professionals do as much for you as you can, and to kind of benefit from that experience. Because I mean, I can tell you when a steak is prepared badly, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily can prepare it nicely. So I can
I love that.
criticize it, but
That
yeah.
doesn't mean that I know how to. I completely agree, especially when it comes to design. I fully agree with that
Mm,
sentiment. I recently tried to. I was designing a website, and when I looked at, I was planning to do a redesign, and I was telling people I'm not a designer. I don't know how to design it. I might know how to code it, but I don't know how to design it, and that's the part I was missing. And they were like, "Oh, but I know you know what a good or bad design looks like, so just don't do that." And I was like, "That's not how it works, you know. I might
mm,
know what a bad design looks like, doesn't mean I know how to make a good one."
exactly.
Uh, yeah, design very much underappreciated, I believe.
Talking about this financial aspect a little more, if you want to talk about that, do you or have you made the money that you invested into the book back again?
I can confidently say, absolutely not. Absolutely and utterly not. But I went into it knowing I won't. I went into it hoping I would,
Mm,
knowing I won't. I'm quite, is pessimistic the right word? Person in terms of, or realistic maybe, um, in terms of, this is my first book. I don't have an established, although I have the Wattpad community. Wattpad is a free platform, so expecting people on a free platform to go pay money for a book is not gonna work.
no.
Those don't translate very well. So I was very, very confident. Well, I was quite sure that I wasn't going to have like a Harry Potter level book, or, I was very hopeful, and I do, and I still do love the book. And I do think it has a lot of potential. I mean, I wouldn't be writing books too if I
Mm,
wasn't. But I had very realistic view of it, that I do not have a large audience that would be willing to pay for it. So I was not expecting to make back the money. I was expecting to learn something from it, and maybe, hopefully, eventually with the future novels, future books, make my money back
mm,
that way and through other different means. I will say one of the most interesting. This might be more linking back to the marketing stuff. One of the most interesting ways that I ended up making the most money back, I think, was through streaming. I think through streaming, you develop this connection with your audience,
mm,
people who have a genuine interest in you as a person and therefore want to support you, or you just have this interesting dynamic with your audience and they were like, oh wow, you published a book, let me go check it out, and they were actually willing to pay for it. So I think a lot of the sales actually came from streaming as opposed to traditional marketing strategies.
Would you mind sharing how many copies you sold of your book?
So I posted it on many different platforms, so I could not give you an exact figure. I will say I want to believe it's above 100 copies, so I was quite happy with that for the first to go around. I know some people be quite like they wouldn't find 100 to be a respectable number, but I very much do. The fact that 100 copies of my book is somewhere out there is at least 100 is incredible to me.
I really think it's something to be quite proud of, that you have 100 people who are not only knowing that you have a book and it's out there, but who are also then willing to pay for it. I think that's quite respectable, especially if you remember that I think the average number is that an average author sells 200 copies of a book, and that's the average, not the median.
Oh, wow.
So that's probably even lower. So being at 100 with the first book, even, I think that's really quite an achievement already.
I appreciate that. No, I did not know that fact. That's really interesting. But yeah, that's the outcome, and I'm hoping, of course, that it still grows. I still hope with book 2, the book 1 sales increase. But I'm completely content with that number, and I'm quite happy with it.
And I think most successful authors also have a lot of books out there, right? They publish ideally maybe once or twice a year a book. And so that's something that then accumulates, of course, over the years. A case like, To Kill a Mockingbird, where you just have one book, and that's just awesome. I think that's
just amazing. Yeah,
that's unrealistic, and that's yeah. You shouldn't expect that.
I think that's what a lot of fresh authors or aspiring authors hope for. They hope they love this. You start this book and you have so much love for the story. You've nursed it, it's your little baby, and they hope that other people would appreciate it as much as they do. And that everyone would just come in and be like, "Did you read this sick book? Oh my God, I gotta share it." And like, that's not realistic. It's really not gonna happen. Especially, to be honest, I do think, in terms of just speaking about the reading landscape as a whole, I don't know what it's like in other countries because, like I say, I'm in the UK at the moment. But I think the education system just has completely killed a lot of people's love for reading, and the people around me, at least, they don't actually read that much. There's one or two or three people who love reading and they actually prefer it to movies, but movies, TV shows, TikTok, Instagram, like all these platforms are just so, like, it's just, there's no way to compete with the stimulus you get from those versus reading,
Yeah, exactly.
So this generation is just, I don't know the exact numbers, so I could be wrong, but I will say I do feel like there's a dramatic decrease in the amount of people who are willing to pay for a book nowadays than back then.
I think it's probably this combination between having to read boring old books that you're not really interested as a teen in school, and then kind of losing interest in the hobby as such. And then on the other hand, right, something like a video game, where every time you level up, you get a nice sound and a nice visual effect. And in a book, you don't have that. The chapter's over, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly it. And you get this weird, like, there's no incentive to read. In fact, and you were forced to read when you were in school. They didn't give you a choice, whether it was textbooks or literary books, whatever it was, you were forced and it was shoved down your throat.
Yeah.
So when you're finally free from that, why on earth would you go back to it?
And you weren't only forced to read, but you were then judged on it, and you were graded.
Such a good point. Oh yes, yeah. You were, if you didn't understand it back to front, you were in trouble, and you felt like the whole world was crumbling. and it was just
Uh,
this pressure, and it's just yeah, reading for fun is not something a lot of people have, you know.
uh, but outside of writing, you're also busy with other projects, aren't you?
Yeah. So, like I said, maybe you have hinted at in throughout this whole um, podcast, I have a bit of a technology background. So, I went to university for electrical and electronic engineering, and I've been coding and doing that aspect of my life, like for basically all my life. I just love building stuff and making stuff and creating stuff. So growing up, I always wanted to make something or make a project or do something that really changes the way an industry works, or at least provides a benefit to someone or to a group of people that could find it very useful. Um, and as I started writing, I was hoping to do something in terms of helping the writing community or the reading community, to hopefully fix that problem of why is why is the video games and social media, why do they get so much more attention than books and stories like that, and just sort of way for books to compete in today's world. So I really wanted to make either, I had so many bizarre ideas, like outlandish fantasy-esque ideas, like you'd think holographic books, you'd think, you'd want to make all this crazy stuff. And then one day, uh, and it struck me, I can't remember where I was. I think I was speaking to my dad, and it all came to me because of the recent innovations we've had in AI. And I came up with the idea to create a platform or a website where people can paste a book or have a book, and the AI will help you create images for that book. It would give you visual content to enjoy alongside the book. For those people who are maybe more visual learners or just enjoy more visuals, but they still want to read books because the books are interesting and they have such beautiful stories, that a lot of people would appreciate if they would give it a chance. Now there's this visual stimulus where as you're reading the book, you get this illustration, and you don't have to pay thousands of pounds to illustrate it. Now you can use this new AI technology. So although I have very limited coding background, I did code my author website, but that was a very long process. I had zero experience in terms of working with AI. I had zero experience in terms of well, like I said, just the author website, but very limited experience in terms of coding the website. So I just had this idea, and I needed a way to make it a reality. So I believe I started in January, and I just sat down and I started coding. I at first tried many different programming languages and was about to overblow it. I stuck to just what I knew, and I slowly but surely have been working on the project over the last couple of months. And it's been an amazing journey, just learning and developing as I go. So right now the website is live. I will say it's still in beta, but it works amazingly well. Gotten some amazing feedback so far from writers who use it to paste their text, and they'll paste a scene they were thinking about, and the website is able to illustrate it, and they can see how it might appear in a reader's mind, and they use that and they fine tune in that to try and fine tune the descriptions of it, to improve their writing. Or a reader who's using it to just enjoy a book in a new way, or again a writer who's just trying to create some promotional content for it, even illustrators are using it because they have a, a website, or sorry, a client who is asking for some illustrations, and they need some inspirations, so they paste their book into the website and they get these visual aids, and they're like, okay, this would be a good scene to illustrate, or this one would be better to improve upon. And yeah, it's really been an experience trying to develop this. There's many features I plan to add in the future to, like I say, trying to keep up um, with these other mediums in today's world. So one of the future very stretch goals right now, but I'm hoping to add is to create from the images, create like a slideshow with some voiceover of the content that you paste in, so you can post on social media, you can enjoy it, you can read it like it's an audio, like a ready audiobook. Just so many different concepts that are going to start developing from this.
Okay, so two
Right.
questions here. Like, first of all, like where is it? Where can we find that?
So right now, it's on visualnovel.ztshoye.com. So ZT is spelled ZT, then SOYOYE.com. It is linked to my author website for now, but it will become its own thing in the future. I'm still just trying to get the feedback and trying to understand what people want and whether um, I'm just trying to fine tune it and develop all the different features. So for now, it's living there, but hopefully we'll move to its own domain very soon.
And give us a bit of a practical walkthrough. So, like, let's imagine I just have a book written, right? And I want some illustrations. Do I just upload the whole Word document, the whole text, the whole like 100,000 words, and copy them in there, or how does it work?
So, let's say you've written your book, like you said, like you have a 100,000 word document. Of course, you're more than welcome to paste the book in there, but that will take quite some time. Although it will do it, it just might take some time and, of course, might cost you a pretty penny. But if you're willing to do that, willing to wait, more than happy for you to do that. But if you're looking for the best results, I think pasting a chapter of your book, chapter by chapter, is the best way to do it. You get that mix of I can see the scene illustrated. Each picture is nice and catered to this to the chapter, to that page, and it is just the best way to do it. I think it also helps when the text doesn't have the special characters. So when you paste your whole 100,000 book, you might have like the page number or a little cool watermark or whatever you have in the background that gets uploaded with it, which obviously might confuse the program and the AI. So getting some raw text in there will be great. The website does have a style guide at the moment, and that really details what's the best formatting and the best content to put there, and the best art styles that you can pick to choose. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. Yeah, there's the website offers you many different art styles as well. So if you wanted to see what your book will look like in a more futuristic setting, or a more fantasy setting, or a more steampunk setting, you can do that. It's just a one click of a button. Um, so yeah, it really depends how you want to use it. Um, all up to you. The power's in your hands.
There are prompting AIs out there like Midjourney, right? Um, how does it differ from that? Does it maybe use some of the APIs? Or
So I would love to work with Midjourney. To be honest, I love Midjourney. Amazing AI art platform. But the way visual novel differs from those is Midjourney requires you to know exactly what you're looking for. You need you to be able to have the scene already in your mind and know exactly how to phrase it. And even if you do know how to phrase it, you need to understand how to manipulate
no?
Midjourney's art AI. You need to be able to know exactly how to phrase the prompt. There's so many different fine tunings you need to do, and you spend hours of your day trying to utilize it to get exactly what you want. Visual Novel simplifies all that. It does all the heavy lifting for you. All you have to do is simply paste your text, and we'll do that for you. We take care of all the fine tuning. We take care of all that, and you just simply paste your text, and you wait um, for the art AI to come up, or for your art piece to come up. Um, and yeah, it is slightly, it's acting like the middleman, so it doesn't waste your time. Obviously, it's better for those people who don't know exactly what they want. So they obviously are describing the scene, but they don't know exactly how they want to position the characters, whether they want this person to be in the foreground, they want this person to, like, they just have a rough idea of the description of the scene. We're writers, we're not artists, we're not illustrators, right?
No.
So for those people who don't have that, this is the platform for them.
And if I put in a chapter, and the chapter is a little bit longer, do I get different images for all the different, let's say, sub scenes within the chapter, or does it give me one big representation of the chapter?
So at the moment, we're working. I say we, but it's really just me at the moment. I do have other friends helping in terms of design and the business of it, but for me, I'm the core developer and the creator. Um, but in terms of how it works, we are working to add a feature, an advanced feature where you get to just get a bunch of images for a short scene that you're writing. That would be one of the future implementations of it. Right now, the way it works is you paste your text, and if you have a longer scene, it will illustrate each scene within that text. It's going to take each scene and split it up into different pages and illustrate each page for you. So as you're reading it, you can see an image and the page that it's trying to illustrate, or the scene it's trying to illustrate, to really make it easier for and enjoyable for readers and writers.
And cost wise, it's not a free service, right?
Right now, it is absolutely free for 3 uses. So the pricing model at the moment is new users. Because obviously I'm a self-published author myself, I understand that we're trying to limit costs. I understand we're trying to keep it down. So for free users, for 3 uses, sorry, it's absolutely free. So that means you can click that generate button 3 times. However, if you're a free user, you do get a limited number of characters. Like I said, longer texts work better. So like a chapter's worth of words works better. So if you're only putting in a sentence, it might not give you exactly the best representation for that. But it will give you something that's relatively close, but it won't work the best. So if you're a free user, you get a limited number of characters and a limited number of uses. If you sign up for the service, so if you register, you get a bit more words and a bit more uses. And then obviously, if you pay for it, you get even more uses. By the way, this is uses for 24 hours. You get a bit more uses per 24 hours, and you get a lot more characters. So you unlock different priorities, I assume. I'm thinking to phrase it, or different tiers as you go down that ladder or go up that ladder. Sorry.
Okay, and it's in beta right now. Is there a clear release date for the, let's say, the 1.0 launch?
So at the moment, it's in beta. Like I said, is there a release date? That is a very good question. I do not have a release date in mind at the moment. It's more of a developing situation kind of deal. I think the release date will be finalized relatively soon, but a release date tends to give the impression that once it's released, there'll be no further development, which is not the case. I think as long as the website is live and as long as people need the service, there's always going to be stuff that's going to be improved, that's going to be added. I want to be able to add a feature where you can use Midjourney in the future, where you can have Midjourney. The art that's being generated is made from Midjourney, so you can get Midjourney level art on the website. I want to be able to have all these features that's constantly going to be added. I've hinted at so many different features coming, or that should be coming in the future. But yeah, there's no release date at the moment. Just hoping to see how it goes. If there's definitely interest and I see some significant progress, I think a release date is very close in the future.
Well, then I can just recommend everybody to just check it out. As you
Really
said,
appreciate it.
three free users, right? So that should be enough to get an idea of it.
Of course, yeah. That's the dream. I want people to be able to test it out, see how amazing the platform is for themselves, paste your books, paste your stories, and see what happens. If you don't like it, you know, no harm, no foul. You didn't spend any money, didn't waste anything. But I'm fairly sure you're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna love it.
And you also brought us a little treat, a little trailer from your book, right?
Yeah, yes, I did. Fairly nervous, but I would love to read out the prologue for you. For the people who might have been following me for a while, you might know that I released an animation a few years back that actually illustrated the prologue of my book, but that was from a professional, what I call them, a professional reader, I guess. Um, and yeah, so I just thought I'd do it myself for today, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Well then, ready when you are.
Okay, let me drink some water. Ooh, okay, it's been a very long time since I've read this, to be honest. So, I didn't ask to be born. That was their choice. I didn't ask to be given this power. It was forced upon me. I didn't ask for this responsibility, but it's now my job. The unwanted depend on me. They look like everyone else, sound like everyone else, have feelings like everyone else. We blend in with the rest of the world, yet we couldn't be more different. If it weren't for me, they would all be forced to walk on this earth being hunted with constant hatred and fear in their hearts. There are several of us out there. Many of them grew up without a name because no one gave them one, without a home because no one was there to shelter them, without a family because no one loved them enough. But the one thing they did give us was this power, this burden, this curse. The unwanted have been psychologically tortured, forced into isolation by a world that rejected them. They close themselves off as feelings of inadequacy consume them. They avoid the world, but the pain doesn't stop. They think their words have no meaning, their interests have no value, and their lives have no worth. But they still try. They continue to fight to defy this unfairness, and rather than despairing and giving up because they were not loved, they believe this isn't the end for them, and they continue on the path straight ahead of them. It is a harsh and painful road, but that is their curse. This agonizing curse that has controlled and discouraged them all their lives. For those who feel this way, it is my job to find you and change your thoughts, to support you as we learn to overcome this curse, the curse of the unwanted. That was a prologue of the book, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, still sweating from doing that, but hope you guys enjoyed it. Um, the book is a fantasy mystery book. It delves deeper into the life of somebody who has been completely shut off from. He's a regular kid, so it seems, and some really bizarre occurrences start happening to him, and he's trying to adapt to the situation. But you can definitely tell as you go through the story that there is a much larger plot, especially hinted at this prologue, that there is a bigger storyline that is surrounding him, that is slowly beginning to unravel, and he is just dipping his toe into it. And the dream is, as we develop him over the next couple books, that we start to understand the full story around him. I hope you enjoyed that, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And once again, what's the book called, and where can the listeners find it?
Yeah, it's called The Unwanted. That's quite a popular title. So if you'd love to find it, I would really appreciate it if you wrote The Unwanted by ZT Soyoye. So that is The Unwanted by ZT Soyoye. And yeah, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and many different platforms. It's available in Kindle, hardcover, paperback. There is many different versions of it for you to enjoy.
And you said that you're already busy writing the second one, right?
Yeah, I'm hard at work at that. I'm roughly, I would say, if you join the mailing list, you will see that I try to give monthly updates on where I'm at in the second book. I believe I'm around 50% done, so we're making decent progress there, and hoping to release that soon.
Is there already a release date for that?
There is no release date at the moment. A lot of stuff in life, you never can predict what's going to happen, so there's always been scheduling issues, but we will hope for the best. And I want to say, should I even say a number? I don't want to say a date and get people's hopes up.
Just a rough season maybe, or a year.
A rough year. Let's pray for 2025. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
I've got a lot of stuff going on in 2024, so I'm going to pray for 2025.
Okay. And where can the listeners find you if they want to learn more about you, find you on social media maybe?
I am completely and utterly reachable on almost all platforms you can think of. Goodreads, by email. My email is ztshoye@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out, but also just message me on Instagram. It's ztshoye on Instagram. It is TommyZT _, I believe, on Twitter. So yeah, feel free to hit me up on any platform that you feel comfortable using, even Wattpad. I would love to hear back from if any of my Wattpad listeners are listening to this right now, shout out to you. You guys have been there and been amazing to me. So cannot thank you guys enough. So feel free to hit me up on that. I believe it's Zechariah19 on Wattpad. But yeah, if I'm not on any platform that you're using, like I said, just hit me up on email, and I'll be there to answer any questions or just have a chat about future books. And if you're interested in the streaming I mentioned, it is Dragon D Ace on Twitch. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
ZT, it was a joy. Thank you so much for stopping by.
I really appreciate you having me here, Eldric. It was a lot of fun getting to know you and being on this podcast. Never done anything like this before, so it was a lot of fun getting to know you and getting to know what it's like to do this. This was a great experience, and I really encourage any authors who are listening to reach out or to answer Eldric on Twitter or on Instagram, wherever you can find him, and get on this. This is amazing.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Eldric Talks. You can find all the links to the socials and the books that we talked about in this episode's description. New episodes are coming out every Friday. For more information about upcoming episodes, head over to eldric-talks.com. That's eldric-talks.com for more information about upcoming episodes. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.